We got this full disturbing true scary story, man. See what this about, bro. Hey, bro, if you scared, just turn on the light. Everything gonna be alright. All you gotta do is just turn on the light and it's all gonna go away. It's always in your head.
I had spent a few days in Austin visiting friends. I live in Louisiana, so it's sort of an all-day drive. On my last day in Austin, my old friend Tom had commented on my Instagram story asking when I leave, and I said today. He told me he lived an hour outside of Austin, which was actually in the direction home for me. I hadn't seen Tom in years, and it would be nice to catch up.
Time.
He said I should stop by, and I said sure, why not? I set my GPS for Tom's address, and it said about an hour and a half drive. Tom and I had been friends back in high school, but lost touch after graduation. We followed each other on social media, but hadn't really spoken in years. When I pulled up, I noticed his house was a little old-fashioned. It wasn't run down or anything, just aged. The wooden porch creaked under my steps, and when he opened the door, I caught the scent of old wood and something rustic, like an old cabin in the woods. Tom was of course very welcoming, giving me a big hug and pulling me inside. Some friendships stay just as pure no matter how much time passes.
Got a crazy
The
house.
inside of the house was just as old as the outside. The furniture looked like it had been around since the 70s, and every step I took on the hardwood floors let out a small creak. It felt kind of Texas, I guess. It was kind of charming in a way, like stepping back in time. We sat down in his living room, catching up on life, drinking whiskey. It was like 5 p.m. by
Whiskey,
this
whiskey,
point.
yeah.
One drink
Oh,
turned into two,
no,
two into three, and before I knew it, I was
I was
pretty
stuck at
drunk.
Tom House.
The warmth of the alcohol made the room feel smaller, cozier, but also heavier. Hours passed like minutes, honestly. We were having such a good time catching up that eventually he dropped the question I knew he'd ask. Hey man, you got a long drive back. Why don't you crash here for the night? He offered. I hesitated, but he was right. I wasn't in any shape to be on the road. I said yeah, good idea, and asked if I'd take the couch we were on. And then he said, nah, I got a spare room. It's nothing fancy, but it's better than the couch. That was good enough for me. We ate some Chinese food that we had delivered, and after a while, he led me down a short hallway to the spare bedroom. I didn't pay much attention to the inside of the room because I was hammered. We both were. But I remember the air in the room was still, like the room hadn't been used in a long time. I barely had time to register my surroundings before I collapsed onto the bed, completely exhausted and drunk. Sometime in the middle of the night, I woke up.
What y'all think gonna happen to him, chat? I don't know. I think somebody. Tom probably be a serial killer or something.
My mouth was dry, my head was spinning, and the room was dark, except for a little bit of moonlight sneaking in through the blinds. That's when I saw it. In the far corner of the room, on the closet door, there was something hanging. At first, it looked like a long black trench coat on a coat rack, but as my eyes adjusted, the shape of it felt wrong. It had a broad upper portion, almost like shoulders, and the way it hung made it look less like fabric and more like a silhouette. My heart pounded in my chest. I didn't remember seeing that when I stumbled into the bed, but I had been drunk. Maybe I just hadn't noticed. I rolled over, trying to ignore it. It was just a coat, nothing more, but I couldn't help myself.
Just
I
get up
peeked
and
again.
see what it
Still
is.
there. I squeezed my eyes shut, took a deep breath, and forced myself to sleep. I don't know how long I was out there before I woke up again. It wasn't just discomfort that pulled me from sleep. It was sound. A slow, soft creaking, like someone stepping carefully on an old wooden floor. My eyes shot open. The room was dimly lit now, dawn creeping through the blinds. I turned my head toward the corner, and my stomach dropped. The coat was gone. I sat up so fast that my head spun. My body was buzzing with a sickening mix of fear and leftover alcohol. I scanned the room, my heart thudding against my ribs. There was nothing in the corner, just an empty closet door. I threw the covers off and rushed to Tom's room. He was snoring, completely unaware of the panic storming through me. I shook him awake, which took a lot of effort considering he was out from all that alcohol. He finally woke up very confused, rubbing his eyes. "The coat," I said breathlessly. "The one on the coat rack in the spare room." He squinted at me, confused. "What coat?" he said. "The black trench coat, the one that was hanging on the closet door. It looked like a person almost." Tom sat up, looking more awake now. "I don't own a trench coat, man. I don't even have a coat rack in that room," he said. I stared at him, waiting for him to say he was messing with me, that this was some kind of joke, but his expression stayed serious. "Come look," I said. He sighed, but got up and followed me back to the spare bedroom. I pointed to the exact spot. "It was right there," I said. Tom scratched his head. He asked me if I was sure I wasn't just dreaming, but I said I know what I saw. I insisted, with my voice shaking slightly. "I woke up and it was there. Then I woke up again and it was gone," I said. We stood in the room for a few moments, both of us feeling the same eerie silence pressing in on us. Tom finally exhaled and shook his head, agreeing we should check the house just in case. We searched every room, every closet, every corner. Nothing. No signs of forced entry, no weird coats hanging anywhere,
Probably ought to
nothing that
go.
could explain what I saw.
Go.
Eventually, Tom tried to convince me that maybe I had been in some kind of half-dream state, seeing things that weren't there. I wanted to believe that, really. I didn't want to think about the alternative. As soon as the sun was fully up, I grabbed my stuff, said goodbye, and hit the road. I almost felt guilty leaving him alone after that. The whole drive back to Louisiana, my mind kept circling back to that moment, waking up to that coat-like figure staring at me from the corner, the way it was just gone in the morning. Maybe Tom played a cruel prank on me, but to this day he's never admitted to anything, so I doubt that. Or maybe, just maybe, there had been someone in that house watching me sleep, and they decided to leave before the morning came.
I'm trying to read that one. I get out like a 5. It wasn't really scary. I mean, probably none of them would be scary, but I get this on a 5. It wasn't all that. A man in a coat, and that was it.
This happened to me when I was 18 years old. I was on a trip with my parents and a friend of mine, whom we can call Anna. This story takes place in Sweden when we were on a road trip. My parents, Anna, and I were going on a domestic trip, and we had an 8-hour drive from home. The plan was to visit a theme park and stay at a campsite, but we hadn't booked one. The day came, and we arrived in the city where the theme park was located, but we planned to visit it the next day, so we needed a place to sleep. Since we had brought tents in our car, my dad searched online for a nearby campsite. He found one that seemed good and close by, so he called the campsite. Unfortunately, that day coincided with a big soccer tournament, and the campsite was fully booked. Since we hadn't reserved a spot in advance, there was no space left for us. My dad called around, but we couldn't find any campsites that were reasonably priced and near the theme park. Our only option was to find a camping spot in nature. We set the GPS to the nearest parking area in the forest to avoid parking fines. Eventually, we found a spot in a nature reserve. When we arrived, there were some people around, so we asked if it was okay to set up our tents there and whether it was a good place to stay. A woman who was hiking told us it was a good place to sleep and that there were no parking attendants. Based on that, we decided to sleep in a small, lonely gravel parking lot. We were surrounded by
That's where you
forest,
messed up,
and a
my guy.
10-minute walk away was a beach. At first, we considered setting up our tents on the beach, but something told me it would be better to camp in the parking lot. As we got out of the car to set up our shelter for the night, I noticed a lone car parked further away in the lot. It looked like it was in bad condition, and there was no one inside. I found it strange because it was already evening, so there were no more people at the beach or hiking in the woods. However, I didn't think too much about it at the time. I helped my parents set up our tents. They were sleeping in one tent, while Anna and I shared the other, with both tents placed close together. After struggling to build them, we finally finished. Anna and I made our tent cozy, watched YouTube, and ate snacks. By this time, it was around 11 p.m. We wanted to sleep at a decent hour so we wouldn't be too tired the next day. After a while, around midnight, we decided to sleep. At this point, my parents were already asleep in their tent. Anna and I were scrolling through TikTok when we suddenly heard a metallic sound from the parking lot. It sounded like a shovel being thrown onto the gravel. We both jumped in fear and asked each other what it could be. Too scared to peek out of the tent window, we chose to stay silent and listen. The sound had come from the same direction as the abandoned car. We then heard what I assumed was a shovel being thrown into the car's trunk, followed by the trunk slamming shut. We sat in silence, our hearts pounding. Then we heard the car speed off as if someone were trying to get away quickly. I texted a friend from a nearby city, telling him where we were staying. He replied, warning me that the beach nearby was known to be dangerous, with organized criminals often engaging in illegal activities there. We had no idea about this before. When I read my friend's message, I felt cold and deeply unsettled. About 10 minutes passed in silence after the car sped away. Anna and I had started to calm down a little, when out of nowhere, we heard the loudest, most blood-curdling scream from a man coming from the woods. We were absolutely horrified. I immediately texted my mom, telling her we just heard a loud scream. When she didn't respond, I called her phone to wake her up. She finally answered and said neither she nor my dad heard anything. She reassured me that it was probably nothing serious, but at that moment, I couldn't think of any normal reason for someone to scream like that. Anna and I crawled under the blankets, terrified, not knowing what was happening. Every minute felt like an hour. Even though it was midnight, we were too scared to sleep. Suddenly, everything became eerily silent. Then, my blood ran cold. I heard footsteps. Someone was walking around our tents, moving stealthily. Anna and I sat up, frozen in fear. I put my phone down so that its light wouldn't illuminate the tent. My heart was racing, and I could hear my own pulse. There was no logical reason for anyone to be walking around our tents in the middle of the forest at this hour. The footsteps moved around our tent first, then toward my parents' tent, and then circled around our car, which was parked nearby. The person stopped and seemed to be looking at our tents. For a moment, there was complete silence. Then, I heard the same car from earlier returning. Its headlights lit up our tents, and Anna and I quickly lay down to avoid being seen. I gathered the courage to peek through the small tent window. I saw the car door slam shut before it sped off again. I felt a brief moment of relief when the person left. From my vantage point, I could see the road they had driven down. 5 minutes later, I saw another car approaching fast. It was a police car, racing in the same direction the other car had gone. Nothing else happened after that. Anna and I were still shaken, so we decided to sit in the locked car to feel safer. I stayed awake until around 5 a.m., keeping watch over the forest, while Anna eventually fell asleep beside me. After about an hour, we went back to our tent, and out of sheer exhaustion, finally fell asleep. We woke up around 9 a.m., completely drained. I told my mom everything that happened, and she revealed that she had also heard the footsteps, but when the person was near their tent, she had also heard heavy breathing, like the kind you hear in horror movies during a scary phone call. She had been terrified too. However, my dad had slept through the whole thing, so we had to tell him the story. Without hesitation, we immediately packed our things and the tents, eager to leave as soon as possible. None of us wanted to stay there any longer. Despite the terrifying night, we had a good time at the theme park later that day. However, that evening, I decided to research the forest where we had camped. What I found made my stomach drop. Just a short time before our visit, a man had been murdered there, stabbed to death due to gang-related debts. Even more disturbingly, 2 men had gone missing from that exact beach and had never been found. I couldn't stop thinking about it. What if the person walking around our tents was a dangerous individual, checking to see if there were any witnesses? What if we had been in serious danger without realizing it? Even now, I still think about that night. Who made that horrifying scream, and why was someone using a shovel in the middle of the night in a forest? And the police, what exactly were they chasing? I guess I'll never know.
W story. Wasn't scary though. I mean, it'd only be scary if you was in that position.
This is a story that still haunts me when I think about it, even though I was so young when it happened. 6 is around the age where a lot of my childhood memories start to become more clear. I have one sibling, my older brother Keith. Keith is 2 years older than me, so at the time he was 8. When I was 6, I had a strict bedtime, 8:30. If I didn't abide by it, or our dad caught either of us up past our bedtime, we'd be in serious trouble. Our dad was always strict with us as kids. Honestly, I don't remember if this happened on a school night or not, but I woke up in the middle of the night to Keith shaking me awake. Keith and I shared a big bedroom upstairs in the house. My parents' room was on the first floor of the house. I was confused why Keith was waking me up, until he told me in a whisper to be quiet and listen. And I did listen, and I heard what he was talking about. It was our mom's voice calling for us downstairs, but it was in a very quiet, whisperish type of voice. I was going to get up to go answer our mom, but my brother told me not to. He said that he didn't think it was Mom. I told him to stop trying to scare me. I remember being so mad at him. He told me to go closer and listen, so I got up and went towards the bedroom door. Right outside of our bedroom door was the little hall that led to the bathroom and another bedroom that our grandma would sleep in whenever she'd sleep over. Directly to the right, when you leave our bedroom, was the stairway downstairs, which had a door as well. I put my ear up on the bedroom door, and I heard the voice clearer. It sounded like our mom's voice, calling our names. Keith, Mikey. I said to Keith, "That's Mom," and he said, "No, it's not." Somehow, as a 6-year-old, and as the little brother, I found myself being the one confident enough to open our bedroom door and then listen through the stairway door. But now, the voice stopped. I whispered to Keith that Mom walked away, and again he said, "That's not Mom." I kept telling him to shut up and that he was scaring me. I unlocked the stairway door and slowly pulled it open to avoid making noise, and when the door was open just enough, I peered through the opening. At the bottom of the stairs was clear as day the silhouette of a person, a woman, but right away I knew it was not our mom. Whoever it was, she saw me because she said, "Hi sweetie, come down." Immediately I shut the door and locked it and went back into our bedroom and locked that door as well. I started to cry, and Keith kept saying, "I told you." We both agreed to start screaming as loud as we could on 3 to wake our parents. So on 3, we started stomping on the floor and screaming as loud as we could. It didn't take long for our parents to barge up the stairs pounding on the locked door. At first, our dad was pissed about the door being locked, but as soon as we let them in, they saw that I had been crying and we were genuinely disturbed about something. They listened to us. My mom was particularly concerned after telling us she was not at the bottom of the stairs and she was not calling our names. She asked what the woman looked like, but all we could say was we couldn't tell. Meanwhile, I remember our dad running downstairs to, I guess, look around for the woman. After a bit, our mom kissed us goodnight again, and I'm pretty sure she told us to lock the doors, which was a first. I was too young to catch on, but it seemed as if our parents knew exactly who it could have been. Keith and I looked out the window when we heard the doorbell after a while, and we saw a police car outside. We wanted to go downstairs, but we stayed put. I remember we begged our parents to tell us who it was and what happened, but our parents would always say they didn't know. They would also say they're proud of us for not going downstairs. Personally, I think they did know who it was, and to save my brother and I from any kind of further trauma or fear, they just never told us. Because the last time I saw my parents for dinner, I asked them about it, and they still shrugged it off as some random intruder, but that never explained how that woman knew our names.
Probably the husband, man. Probably was cheap.
This happened when I was 16. I was still in high school. I obviously didn't have a car yet, so I was at the mercy of my parents driving me around, or just walking if it was close. It was the weekend. My friend Haley was having some of our friends over since her parents weren't home. My mom drove me to her house. Haley lived close, about a 3-minute drive and 20-minute walk. My mom was single at the time, and she also liked to go out too, so she told me that if she's out late, then to just walk or get a ride home, which meant she was going on a date. A few of our girlfriends were at Haley's house, Tina, Courtney, and Belle. The 5 of us hung out in her backyard for a few hours until some boys from our school unexpectedly showed up. By unexpectedly, I mean Haley didn't tell me she was inviting them. The reason I was annoyed by this was because one of the boys that showed up was a boy I had some annoying history with and didn't really want to see. Haley thought she was being cute and sneaky by inviting him there against my knowledge. She for some reason wanted him and I to work things out. It was just an awkward mess. There were 4 boys and 5 girls, including me, so eventually, I just decided I wasn't really feeling it. So, after a while, I left. I'm sure after I left that some of the others started to leave shortly after because it was already late, but I just didn't want to be around those boys. I made sure to let Haley know how pissed off I was over texts as I was walking home, and she
Oh
kept saying,
man.
OMG, come back. She apologized and I forgave her, but I still just wanted to go home. I walked for like 5 minutes until I slowed down. I thought I heard footsteps behind me, and when I slowed down, I confirmed I heard footsteps that weren't mine. I turned around, and there was a middle-aged man with a hood up over his head and his hands in his hoodie pocket. He was smiling, looking at me, and said, "How you doing?" I responded, "Hi," and just turned and kept walking. We were in the suburbs. People are walking around. It's not unheard of, even if it was late. 5 minutes more passed of me walking, and every time I'd glance around, that man would still be behind me, more or less the same distance away, maybe a little closer each time I looked. It was not a straight path home. I'd have to make multiple turns onto intersecting roads to get to my house, and each turn I made, he was still there. I was texting my friends about it, and then the man from behind me said, "Isn't it such a nice night? Love this weather." I replied back, "Yeah," and that was it. I started walking just a bit faster, but not
Isn't
enough
that
to
why he
draw
was following
suspicion
you?
like that I'm running away. The man spoke again, and every time he opened his mouth, part of me died a little more inside. Like, why was he talking to me? Why was he following me? He asked, "Are you from the neighborhood?" I replied, "No." I was making my answers short and firm. The man chuckled. I started asking all my friends for help, to send one of the guys to come pick me up. Ironically, the boy who I was trying to avoid was on his way to come get me. I'll just nickname him Brandon. The man behind me then said something that changed everything. He said, "I'm not gonna hurt you. You live by the elementary school, right?" I turned around, and he stopped in his tracks. He was still smiling, but now his smile seemed more disingenuous, more sinister. I screamed, "Leave me alone," and started to run. I heard the man running behind me, catching up to me. At that point, it was my life on the line, so I started screaming bloody murder. I started screaming, "Help me," for everyone in their houses to wake up and hear. The man dropped his nice guy facade and said, "Shut up, you little bitch." My screams definitely
What the
scared him
hell?
off because he obviously didn't want a bunch of witnesses about to come out of their houses. He ran away into the darkness, and I saw some lights in the houses around me turn on. One couple came out of their house, and I explained I almost got kidnapped. I stayed there in front of their house until Brandon arrived to pick me up. He drove me home. It was only like a 1-minute drive after that. My mom wasn't home, she was out, and she wasn't answering my texts. I didn't want to be alone, so I invited Brandon in to stay the night. I
Dude, why
know he
you
was the
just go back
happiest
to the
camper
party?
alive. But it didn't end there. We were up late just talking and reminiscing about old times when we both heard footsteps circling the house. My room in that house was upstairs facing the backyard. We heard the gate to the backyard opening. My mom would never enter through the backyard, so something was off. I held back from yelling out, "Mom," and instead, Brandon and I just looked out the window, watching. We didn't hear any more sounds. We were expecting to see someone walking around the yard, but instead, we both heard a man's voice say, "I see you up there." I let out a very audible gasp and I stepped away from the window. Brandon yelled out something along the lines of, "We're calling the cops, you pussy freak." That's exactly what we did. The fact that this man knew where I lived, he probably knew who I was. What if he knew I was going to Haley's house? Brandon did a lot of the talking on the phone with 911. Looking back, I know he tried really hard to be the man in the situation, and I appreciated that. I was honestly so happy he came inside. The cops showed up, and their presence just made me feel safer.
Oh
Even
my
just giving
god.
them a description of this man made me feel better, like at least something was done. My mom got home soon after, and she was just as freaked out as I was. They kept a police car parked on the block for a few hours as a deterrent, thankfully. From there on, I didn't do any walking at night. I was even scared to go into our backyard after that. My mom had to have our uncle come over and install an entire security camera system. He made no effort in hiding them. They were on full display to deter that creepy man and any other creep from coming to that house. I'm glad to say that the story ended there, because this incident also prompted my mom to sell that house about a year later, just because she hated seeing me living in constant fear in that house. We never found out who that man was.
That story was worse. This is the worst story out of all of them, bro. Man, man, he acting scared. Nigga should have stood on 10. See me, I ain't going for none of that. He's up with me. He was acting all scared, right? Talking about Randall trying to be the man in the situation, bro. You should have took initiative. You knew the dude. She should have just stayed to the party for all that, though. I ain't gonna cap. But man, it was a W video. Let's go air stories in the dark. What y'all want me to do? What y'all want me to start doing these like at nighttime? Like nighttime, like lights off in the dark to make the surroundings more sensual and stuff like that. Shit. Let me know in the comments though. But hey, appreciate y'all. Like, comment, subscribe, and let me know what y'all want me to react to next, bro. I'm out.